What's going on?
Hey.
Luqman Nation family, this is Jacqueline Luqman.
And I'm Abdul Shaheed Luqman.
And welcome to Live and Coffee Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation.
The most dangerous show anywhere.
So it has been a while since we have done a live show. Things have been ridiculously busy.
People thought that, we went away. People thought we went away.
Yeah.
And, I was getting some message. Let me mute this thing because I don't want to, because we're not prima donnas over here. We can admit our mistakes. So anyway, but there were a lot of people. Well, let me not exaggerate. Not a lot, but there was a few people who tune into us each week, and they was like, "What happened to Luqman Nation? You guys aren't making videos anymore?"
Right.
Well, look. I mean, things have been hectic. Things have been busy. We've been involved in a lot of other organizing stuff, and it's just us too. So, but we're back, and also we've been planning shows and interviews and stuff. Like I said, we haven't kidnapped any college kids or anybody for interns. Not yet.
They keep running from us.
They do.
They see us coming, and they're like, they want us to work with them, and
exactly.
We can't.
But I want to welcome you all to Coffee Current Events and Politics. In Luqman Nation, and we appreciate you sharing your time with us. So invite your friends, and as Chanel Pittman said, she's going to share it, and we ask all of you to share this because we feel that this is going to be a very important show. We think that that there is a lot of stuff's going to come out of this. Yeah,
we hope so. We've also got a watch party going on Facebook. Hey! I just saw the thing, click the button, so I don't know, we got like 89 things going on at one time, and that's just appropriate because we got like 89 things to talk about in this conversation because, all right,
look, everybody who's been following our page lately know that we've been engaged in this discussion about reparations. I mean, a lot of you guys were mad at us because of, because of our critiques of Bernie Sanders. And what we believe is his weak stance on reparations. I mean, we've been getting a lot of flack, from a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters.
Yeah, but to be honest, we've been getting flack like that since 2016 with Sanders. We have talked about the need for reparations on this show ever since we've been doing this show. So like this conversation is not new to us. And I used to say, I was saying last week, like, oh, it's new to some of you, but that's actually a lie. Some of y'all are a trip with the way, right? Man, some of y'all are a trip with the games y'all play. All of a sudden you're so offended by black people calling for reparations, but y'all weren't offended. Let me grab this. Y'all weren't offended back when Bernie Sanders had his economic town hall. Remember that?
I do remember
that?
Yeah.
1.7 million people viewed it on Facebook. That's what Sanders does. He does stuff on Facebook all the time. Derek Hamilton, that town hall was noteworthy for us because Professor Derek Hamilton, as far as we're concerned, one of the noteworthy former professors of economics at Duke University. He's somewhere else doing bigger, better things now. But he and Professor Sandy Darity, and some other economists at Duke University wrote this incredible study. What was it? 10 things people get wrong about closing the wealth gap. Professor Hamilton spoke at Bernie Sanders' economic town hall.
He did.
And this is what he said. I didn't want to pull up the video because we got a lot of ground to cover and I don't want to play a lot of video. Right. All right. This is what Hamilton said at Sanders Town Hall. Hamilton suggested that the universal program Sanders favors would not erase the racial inequalities that follow Black Americans at every level of socioeconomic and educational attainment. He noted that a Black household headed by a college graduate has, on average, less wealth than a white household headed by a high school dropout. So, and this is Hamilton speaking, so when Senator Sanders proposes that we should have tuition-free public education, absolutely, but as an end unto itself. What he's saying is, yes, free college tuition is a good idea just because it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. It is not going to address the racial wealth gap.
Right.
It's not. He says, and this is why it's not, he said, we exaggerate the returns from education, particularly to marginalized groups. Again, back up here where he said that a Black household headed by a college graduate has, on average, less wealth than a white household headed by a high school dropout.
So you know what that means? That means that college degree is worthless.
But when it's in a Black hand.
Right, when it's in a Black hand.
When it's in a Black hand. And increasingly, that college degree is worthless even when it's in a white hand.
Right,
and if white people know this, because that's happening to them now, this has always been happening to us. So how is making college tuition to get that worthless piece of paper free going to change the way through? So Professor Hamilton said, yes, free college tuition, good idea, but it's not going to address the wealth gap. Sanders, Warren, and Moore all endorsed relatively well-known left-leaning solutions to inequality, including $15 minimum wage, stronger unions, free college education, and paid family leave policies. Perhaps in keeping with his intersectional focus, Hamilton embraced more radical measures. His preferred solutions included the creation of trust funds for every American at birth, a federal jobs guarantee, the replacement of private payday lenders with postal banking, and an end to academic tracking in grade school, which he argued often replicates racial segregation, even within relatively integrated schools. Now, these are all issues that Black people have pinpointed and have lived and have talked about for decades, that none of Sanders' policies, none of Warren's policies, none of Booker's policies, they don't touch.
Right.
Because can we just be honest about Bernie Sanders? He's not radical. He is, at best, a very popular centrist. All right?
Right.
So, okay, he's the Democratic Party is so far to the right that Sanders' policies look radical. They're not. They're not. Okay? They're good. They're better than what we have now, but they are not radical.
And they're not original.
And they're not original. We're going to try to get to why that's true. So here's the part about what Professor Derek Hamilton said at Bernie Sanders' economic inequality town hall that really reminded me that white progressives now who are pissing all over reparations and mad at Black folks because we're calling Sanders out on his weak, once again, stance on reparations. This is how I know y'all full of shit. Derek Hamilton said, to really get beyond our race problem, when we're ready as a nation to come together, we need to come to grips with reparations. He said it. He said the word.
The R word.
The R word.
Yeah, the R word.
And how did all those nice white progressives in Bernie Sanders' economic inequality town hall respond? Hamilton concluded with that statement, prompting cheers from the crowd.
Okay.
Now, people have been saying, well, when Sanders has been asking, what does reparations mean? He's asking for us to define it. He's asking for a concrete plan. People are thinking that he's saying something that he's not saying. I personally don't believe Bernie Sanders is saying anything other than exactly what the hell he said. And what he has been saying was, well, what does reparations mean? It means different things to different people. Actually, no, it doesn't.
Well, I don't know. I just think that it's just what we've always gotten when we talk about our issues, especially with white progressives. We get the deflection.
Right.
And that's all. And to me, that's all it was. Bernie Sanders knows very well what reparations mean.
Right.
Because you know why? Because what's her name from The View? Sunny I can't
On The
remember her
View?
name. She's on The View, yeah.
You know I don't watch The View. I don't know who, other than Whoopi and Joy Behar.
Well,
I don't know who those people are.
but she was the one that used to be on CNN a lot.
Oh, Hoskins?
Hoskins, that's her name. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, when Bernie Sanders tried to play that game, see, let's look at one thing. Every candidate gets what they call talking points.
Right.
The Democratic Party learned from Hillary Clinton's campaign when Black Lives Matter cornered her. And when WikiLeaks leaked the emails out, when the email said, if you have to deal with Black Lives Matter, don't promise them anything.
Don't agree to any policy that Black Lives Matter presents to you.
Right. Listen to them, but don't commit yourself to any policies. Right. Now, on the surface, you know, some people say, okay, that's playing politics. But they learned from Hillary Clinton's campaign. So now all of them are doing that. Booker, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, all of them are now like, don't promise black people shit. Listen to them, you know, do the wordplay and all this stuff, but don't promise them shit. And the thing of it is the reason why is because they're all chasing after the so-called disinfected working white guy, white guy and woman who voted for Trump.
The Trump voter, the pissed off Trump voter. They are all of them. And now listen, y'all, this is not just a criticism we have of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders.
I mean, hold up, because I was hurt. I was hurt when some of our friends came at us because I'm like, oh, wait a minute. One of our friends, who I will not name, said, I don't understand why you guys are picking on Bernie.
Oh, yeah.
Why should
we're picking on Bernie.
Yeah, picking on Bernie. And I mean, if you know, it was okay when we was dragging Booker through the mud.
Yeah.
It was okay when we was making fun of Kamala Harris with her hot sauce on her greens and everything else. Oh man, everybody was with that.
Everybody loved that.
Yeah,
that's right, Luqman. Yeah. Go, Luqman.
Yeah, everybody loved that. Everybody loved when we talked about Elizabeth Warren. And all stuff. But then when we got to Saint Bernie, then all of a sudden now it was like, you know. So I had replied. I said, well, it's just Bernie's turn. I said, if you've been following us, then you know that we've been basically critiquing all of the candidates. You know, I mean, I was really disappointed in Bernie's answers when he was faced with the questions of reparations because, like, I'm tired, y'all. I've worked all day.
He is tired.
But reparations, because you know, people don't understand. Those of you who are new to Luqman Nation don't understand that Jackie and I got our start with this whole social media platform when Jackie and I was part of Real Progressives. And so,
you mentioned them by name.
Yeah, that's okay.
Jesus.
Okay. And so Real Progressives, we were part of that. And so we were sent on a mission down to the DNC convention.
That's right.
I'm talking about in Philly, where it was like 105, 110 degrees
That's
heat.
Right. That's right.
So we were down there. Now, mind you, this was after Bernie had already said publicly and stated that he would not support reparations. But the Luqmans were still supporting him because we felt that, okay, he's not supporting reparations now. Okay, we can let him live because everything else was okay with us.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But from 2016 to 2019, 3 years later, I was disappointed because I felt that Bernie Sanders should have been able to evolve on that issue. What I'm saying is that you said no in 2016, and I felt like 3 years later, you should have paid more. Like you should have thought about it a lot more in order to have a better response than what he's been responding.
Yeah, I mean,
how he's been responding, especially
since we do. I mean, and we we don't name drop here in Luqman Nation. We don't do it. We're not going to do it now. With that one exception to give some context of why we're not just bashing Bernie Sanders just because we hate Bernie Sanders. That's not the case at all. We don't like his response to this issue. It's troubling because it's important to our people. But we know people who have worked on Sanders' campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Who worked on his campaign in 2016, who told him that his calling reparations divisive was all by itself divisive. It was messed up. Black people, it was disrespectful to black people. It was alienating his black supporters.
Right.
Who are already kind of recovering from his supporters vitriol against them after that rally in Seattle.
Well, the Black Lives Matter
right.
activists.
So we know people who have Bernie's ear, black people who have Bernie's ear, who have been trying to push him, school him, educate him on this issue. And these are not lightweights, these people.
And we have to understand something. Bernie is an old white guy. I mean, and look, I admire Bernie Sanders. I really do. I admire him. I admire his stance. I admire the positions that he has taken when it comes to civil rights and all. Mm-hmm. But he's an old white guy. And he answered the questions of reparations like an old white guy would.
Yeah, he
did.
What I
mean? Yeah, like an old white guy would. And it's like, what is reparations?
Right.
Well, it means something to different people. But Sonny Hostin cornered him and said, reparations mean money.
And thank you.
Yeah, reparations mean money.
Reparations means money.
This is where he stepped into some shit after that, because then he wasn't expecting for her to actually answer that. Like a lot of you white progressives think that we don't know what we want. You know what I mean? Now look, he said, well, I don't know. What is reparations? What does it mean? It could mean something different. And she said, reparations mean money. Mm-hmm. Now he was caught off guard because he, his handlers didn't tell him how to respond
to that when somebody just says, well, it means money.
Right. Because, most white progressives assume that we as a black community don't know what we want. So what happened is when Sonny Hostin said money, then he was like, oh, snap. Oh, man, I didn't get no notes of that. So what he did was he said, and which made him step into some more shit. Mm-hmm. He said that, but this was the second time he said it, because he was on the Breakfast Club and said the same answer.
Right, he said the same thing.
He said that I don't support giving African Americans a check. He said that on the Breakfast Club, when Charlemagne asked him about it. Right. And then he tells Hostin, I think that there's better ways of helping people besides writing them a check. That was the shit that was stepped in. And some of you guys that's on my page and follow some of the stuff that I write, y'all know what I said about it. Mm-hmm. Because I truly believe that Bernie Sanders would not have went in front of AIPAC. He would not have went in front of any Jewish community and said there are better things, there are better ways of taking care of Jews or Jewish victims of the Holocaust than just giving y'all money.
Than just writing a check.
Right.
And since we're in the era of accusing people of trotting out racist tropes, I hate how that word tropes has caught on, like it, and I think that just speaks to the influential nature of social media, how everybody uses that word tropes now. Yeah. And just because Representative Ilhan Omar was accused of trotting out anti-Semitic tropes, and it's just ridiculous stuff. But since we're talking about tropes now, this whole thing about there are better ways to solve issues of inequality than writing people a check. Nobody says that about anybody else.
Well, that was part of my post. Yeah. My post is that he wouldn't have said it to Jewish survivors of the Holocaust. He wouldn't have said it to Japanese. He wouldn't have said it to Native Americans. He wouldn't have said it to the LGBTQ community. He wouldn't have said that. But all of these, and in this country, all American politicians feel that it's okay to not respect black people's feelings, not respect the aspirations of black Americans, the demands of black Americans. You could talk to us any kind of way and it's okay. What are we going to do about it? So, I mean, that offended me because I'm saying that, believe it or not, we've actually thought about this. And when I say we, I'm talking about the black community, some of the black community, and some of our intelligentsia have actually really thought this all the way through, came up with plans and platforms and stuff. And you know what? Every time that we try to share those ideas, it falls on deaf ears from a lot of the white community. Not all of y'all, because some of y'all are really, really, some of y'all had expressed your support for reparations in the form that we think they should be. So those, we salute you guys. But then there's you other ones. See, one of the things about this topic of reparations that I like that we've been having is that it exposed a lot of y'all.
Again.
Yeah. It exposed a lot. Now, that doesn't mean that you're bad people. I mean, trust me, I got a lot of faults too. I mean, but it exposed a lot of y'all, because it's like, why why is it that why is this such a problem? Like we was seeing people write on our page, oh, it's going to be it's complicated. What's complicated about it? Europeans went over there, got kidnapped people, brought them here to work for free, abused
made
them,
made them slaves,
right? Took away their names and their history and all of this stuff, and made them chattel. Right. Now that's another thing, chattel.
Right. What does that mean?
Look it up to get the
let's talk about why that is important.
We know it's not anything.
Chattel means property.
Right.
It is property. Human beings were legally rendered less than human beings, but made property.
Now let's be clear, because a lot of folks, black and white, and others always say, well, Africans sold, y'all sold each other. The word chattel is what makes the distinction.
Right.
Yes, slavery was practiced all over the world by many different cultures. That is true. It's not a new phenomenon. The Europeans did not invent it. That's true. But what the Europeans have done is they've taken it to a more insidious level. Like they took it to slavery, especially African slavery, nobody likes being a slave, but the African understanding of slavery was not the European understanding of slavery. You did not own that person.
Right.
And you did not own their lineage. Right. You did not own their kids. You did not, so the European brought that kind of idea to the institution of slavery. So when a lot of the critics say, well, y'all sold each other. Well, let's put that in proper context. The context is that if you come to me and say, oh, we just want them as, to be our slaves or whatever language they use, and the African understanding, because the Africans have a worldview. So the African understanding is, oh, well, we do that.
Right. They'll be your servants for a period of time.
Well, no, they probably didn't tell them that. But what I'm saying is that probably wasn't discussed. It was, people, in relationships with people make a lot of assumptions about other people. Cultures make a lot of assumptions about other cultures. So when you're meeting for the first time, you're saying, okay, yeah, well, we have that here too, and we practice that. So you're assuming that the way you view it is the way they view it.
Right.
So yeah, sure, these people are not part of our tribe. We caught them in warfare, because that's another mistake white people make. Y'all don't all look at each other as just white from Europe.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
I mean, Hitler didn't look at the Poles as being fellow white folks. He said that they were inhuman. He called the Slavics inhuman. I mean, it wasn't, and the French, they just shit on everybody. But the thing of it is that Europeans didn't look at they didn't view each other as white.
Right.
We're this one homogenous group.
They're all brethren. They're all brethren from the continent together.
Right. So Africans didn't view themselves like that either.
What?
Yeah, they didn't view themselves like that.
Africans weren't all kumbaya and brothers on the continent?
First of all, they didn't call themselves Africans. They called themselves by their nation and their tribe. And
what?
The
Stop it.
Yeah, so if you're a German, then if you're a German and that's your nation, that's your language, that's your culture, well, then you might go to Africa, and then there's a Mandinka who does not consider himself a Hausa, who does not consider himself a Fulani, you know what I mean? Or does not consider himself an Igbo or Yoruba, and the other thousands of tribes in Africa and nations in Africa.
Thousands.
So there wasn't no homogenous black group. That was another invention of the Europeans. Right. It takes too much time. What are you? A what? And what are you?
What?
And what are you?
And yet none of you speak the same thing. You know what? All of you have to be identified by the same thing for our convenience.
You remember Roots? You remember the movie Roots, the first one, not the remake. Do you remember when they was on a slave ship and these ignorant white guys on the ship, past the arrogance, like they know, and somebody said, "Oh, what are they speaking? Oh, they don't really have a language. It's some kind of gibberish. It's not a sophisticated language." I mean, these guys probably got the equivalent of a kindergarten education, right? Because as backwards and ignorant as a lot of these people were, that were involved in these businesses, and the class practices of England, of Europe. So these people were like, they were backwards and ignorant.
Yeah, they were
but
the
yet
bottom of the social caste.
Right, but they're passing themselves off as being experts on somebody else's culture.
Right.
So this is how this whole misunderstanding of African involvement in slavery goes to the point. Well, y'all sold each other. Well, they weren't a homogenous group.
Right. That is an excellent point.
You know.
That is, I'm so glad you raised that point about this issue of, why Africans sold each other into slavery, because somebody came on our page and made that comment. But here's the other thing that we do not keep into, that we don't keep in mind when we think about the transatlantic slave trade. Europeans weren't like a peaceful group of people. Europeans, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, they didn't come to Africa and ask nicely. I mean, if you really think that's what they did, there's seriously something. They did not come to Africa with their ships and their weapons that were unlike anything Africans of any tribe had seen. Mm-hmm. Guns and cannons and all kinds of other mechanized types of warfare. Do you really think these people came to the shores of Africa and asked, "My good sir, do you have some captives that you would like to exchange with us for some of these firearms that you can use in warfare against your enemies?" Mm-hmm. "Oh, you would not like to do it? Well, we understand. Thank you very much, cheerio," and got on the ship. And that's not how it worked. I'm not at all saying that there were not some kings of certain tribes who were just fine with making the money, with getting the benefits. But do you seriously think that they could say no? Because we do know.
Well, no, they did say. I mean, but see, we have to understand something. Again, these have to be in context. The Europeans did, how can I put this? The Europeans didn't come to Africa because they thought Africans were weak. Mm-hmm. They didn't come to Africa and take slaves or take people captive because they thought Africa was weak. Just like in our time, mm-hmm. when we know the political situations and what's happening around the world, it was like that then. I mean, news traveled a lot slower. Mm-hmm. But see, what happened was that the Europeans took advantage of the breakdown of the 3 African kingdoms. The Songhai, the Mali, and what's the other one? There was 3 major African kingdoms. Look it up. That's your homework. But those 3 kingdoms, long as they were strong, there was no European invasion.
That's true.
There was no European invasion because these empires, that's what they were. The Songhai, what was the other one?
I cannot remember.
I used to just run them off but I'm tired.
Yeah, but we're tired today.
Yeah. But anyway, look them up. But there were 3 African empires, and long as they were strong, even the Vikings sailed around Africa. They didn't want no parts of Africa.
They didn't want none of that.
You know what I mean? So you never heard of any Viking excursions into Africa because of those empires, and there were more, but those 3 were the strongest. So the point is the fact that when those 3 empires were warring with each other, and war weakens nation states. That's just what happens. I mean, when you put all your resources into fighting your enemies and stuff, you lose manpower.
Right.
You lose. I mean, human society has always been the same. So you go to war and you fight these wars and you lose manpower. If there ain't a lot of males, women can't get pregnant, so populations don't rise. So what happens is, what happens is that the Europeans found that out. They found it out, and that was, well, let's go check that out now.
Right. So maybe we got some inroads in there.
Now they did. Even then, they didn't come in there because even then they didn't come there and just take over. They had to make alliances. They had to make friends. They had to find out who were the strongest tribes and all this stuff, and trade it with them. Use them as allies for whatever, for what they wanted. The fact that Africans, like Native Americans, like Europeans, like Asians, are not homogenous, they would find some tribes who would take it and feel like it was in their national interest to wipe out their enemy. And if these magic sticks can do it, then let's do it. Right. You know what I mean? So that's that. I know we got off topic a little bit, but we have to understand when people who people who try to pass themselves off as authority on things African, and they're not.
and they're really not.
And that goes for black people too. It's not just white people, because black people say the same stupid shit.
Well, that comment came from a black person.
They're the same stupid shit. So they sit up there and be like, I don't think that we should ask for reparations because we did it to ourselves. Fool, sit down. I'm about ready to say something. Sit down. You don't look. You aren't qualified to speak on the subject.
Come on now.
You know what I mean? You aren't qualified to speak on the subject.
Qualified.
Sit down.
All.
You know what I mean?
Especially when we do have the history to prove.
And the
all
scholars,
of and the scholars who we post all the time, Dr. John Henry Clark, Kwame Ture, Dr. Marimba Ani,
Dr. Ben.
Yeah, Dr. Ben. All of these people who have chronicled the history of resistance to European invaders in Africa. Once many African tribes realized, wait a minute, these people. Something's not right. Yeah, they did resist. And they did fought war. They did fight them. They fought wars.
Because that's another mistaken belief that a lot of people have, is that Africans, and a lot of this Jackie and I always, tried to suggest to you guys to read Kendi X.
Dr. Ibram X. Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning.
Right, and that explains how Europeans did all of these mental, educational acrobatics in order to define African people in a certain way. And after centuries of those of this stuff, then it starts to be, you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe it.
People start believing it.
So they started telling a lot of lies about Africans in Africa and how we supposed to be.
And they started telling us those lies. That's the key. They started telling us those lies.
Well, they told us those lies when we were in their captive.
Right.
But but the thing of it is that you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe it. So so here we are, and I'm glad you said that, Jackie. Here we are, spouting this racist stuff that wasn't true. That African men had no masculinity. That African men didn't have a sense of honor, because that's what you're saying.
Right.
If you're saying that a group of men from another continent can come to your continent and take your women and children, without a fight, then what you're basically saying is that the African man is not a man, and that is the belief of that, and that is part of the stereotype. That European, when I say Europeans, I'm not talking about, the common folk. I'm talking about the educational class.
Right.
I'm talking about those ones who wrote the books, who wrote all of this stuff, lying and mislabeling African people, lying against African people, and trying to create a narrative so that they can feel comfortable with the way they treating Africans. So now you're saying, oh, they're not men, they're just grown boys. After all, we went and stole their children, we raped their women, we did all of this stuff.
We raped them.
Yeah, we raped them, and they didn't fight back. And then so you got generations of slaves who didn't know Africa. Africa was removed from their memory. Nobody talks about Africa anymore because those people have died off. So the only narrative you got is the racist European that's treating you like shit and telling you that you deserve to be treated like shit because your people back in your homeland, they were just grown children. So you start to believe that, like Dr. John Henry Clark said, that the white guy that he worked for, and he used to see this white man read books all the time, history books. So John Henry Clark, he was a boy at the time, and he was working for this white man. He asked him, he said, well, what does that history book say about my people? And the white man said, John, I'm sorry to say this to you, but your people have no history. But that was the prevailing narrative that was being told to black people. Your people didn't have a history.
Yep.
So now, as a black person, you're forced in one way because your worldview is, you've been lied about the way the world really is. So you start to believe that everything white is good.
That's right.
That everything that was beneficial to mankind came from white folks or Europeans, I should say.
And for us here in the United States, we believe that everything white people say is got to be true.
And you know what? I ain't even got to go to nobody else's example, y'all. I'm going to do some self-disclosure. Me, when I was in the 5th grade, after Shaheed, I had a black teacher, I won't name him, He's probably dead now anyway. But I was in 5th grade, and I remember, as kids do, we see the world in these ways, and I remember telling my black teacher that I thought slavery was good for us.
Wow.
No, listen. I thought this through in the 5th grade.
Okay.
And I looked at my world, as limited as it was, and I saw white folks doing fine, and I seen black folks. I mean, we were doing good. What I saw was white people living in nice houses. I saw white people have good jobs.
Right.
I saw white people, basically like living good. And I'm looking in my neighborhood, and I'm seeing my parents, man, busting their asses every day.
Right.
And we still in the ghetto.
Right.
I'm looking at most black folks, not having the briefcase and suit jobs and all that. Anyway, I'm in the 5th grade.
Right.
So I took that to mean, in my young mind, I said slavery was good for us because I remember watching, and that's another racist propaganda. The United Children Fund. Feed the Children.
Feed the children. The skinny, starving, pot-bellied African child.
I'm a kid of the 70s. So my parents threw me in front of the television to babysit me. Yep. So while that TV was babysitting me, I remember the commercials of the African kids starving with the bellies out and all this stuff. And in my mind, I said, I come from those people.
Right.
I come from those people. They can't even feed themselves. Damn, that would have been me. If it wasn't for white people rescuing me, that would have been me. And I remember going back to school, telling my black teacher that slavery was good for us because first, I wouldn't be starving and I would be a Christian. I wouldn't have been Christian. I remember saying that.
Wow.
But you know what the sad part? I got an excuse. Because I'm a child.
Because you were in the 5th grade. You were a child.
You know what the tragedy was? That my grown black educated teacher told me that was true.
Jesus Christ. See.
My right-handed guy, he said to me, he said, that was true.
And this is, I'm speechless.
He said that was true.
But see,
but one more point. This teacher taught my father and my mother.
Oh, okay. All right.
So 3 generations of screwed up black people from this guy.
So do you understand now? Just listening to that one anecdote, that one.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, it's an anecdote.
Okay.
That one story from your life and how we pass down these ridiculous, ignorant narratives. And how they inform the way, not just we look at ourselves, but the way we look at policy. So when you got somebody like, I have so many articles to share with y'all.
But I want to add this. I started to believe that white people was superior to us because of what I saw on TV, what I saw I'm from New Jersey, so Jersey's very America's segregated. But from what I saw around me, my worldview. And I didn't start seeing white people as being like everybody else till I went to college, seeing how stupid a lot of them was. When I went to college and I seen how stupid a lot of them white kids was, I was like, shit, damn, somebody really, really lied to me.
I was like, these people are not superior. I will admit that there was a time in my youth that I thought that white people were better than black people too.
Growing up in America as a black child.
There is no way you can't think that at some point in your development.
I mean, this is the same country that had the doll test.
And there was a bunch of black kids who they were asked, which is the pretty doll, which is the smart doll, which is the doll that has more friends. And a bunch of black kids always pick the white doll. Why? Because in this society, we are indoctrinated to believe that white people are better. They are superior. They are smarter. They do have all the answers. So that was perfect. That was perfect.
Well, that's also how white supremacy has maintained its control and its power.
Exactly. And it's not all through brute force like it was during enslavement. Now it is through these entrenched ideas that are baked into our policies that even black people, where is that article? That even black people will trot out because
Uncle Ruckus himself.
They are They have that same worldview. I think this is a perfect circle right back to reparations. This is one of the reasons why we have such a problem explaining and not explaining. This is why we have such a problem in this country focusing on reparations for Black people in particular. Because see, we have a problem. Not that it wasn't a problem, because it took the Japanese 10 years.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
All. I mean, we've been here 500.
We've been here 500.
That's all.
When was emancipation? 1865?
That's on paper.
On paper. It was really later than that, but how many centuries ago was that?
We still aren't emancipated, if you ask me.
That's true, but I mean, the 40 acres on a mule, General Sherman's order, field order number 15 was what? How many centuries ago was that?
1860 something.
Yeah. So that is how long we have been fighting for reparations. And those original reparations were actually stolen from us because they were actually given to our ancestors, and the government took them and gave them back to the slave owners. Took that land, gave it back to the slave owners. But
this is the first time that I ever heard two nations go to war, right? Mm-hmm. And white supremacy is good for this because they did it during World War II. Mm-hmm. The Germans and the Americans and the British, they fought in Africa too.
Yes.
Now, check the point I'm going to make. The Marshall Plan ain't gave shit to the Africans.
How about that now?
You know what I mean?
How about that?
So you got the Desert Fox running through Africa, blowing shit up. You got Italy, Mussolini and his soldiers going all through Africa, blowing shit up. Then you got Montgomery and the British going through Africa, blowing shit up. Mm-hmm. Then you got the Americans going through Africa, blowing shit up. Mm-hmm. But then when it came time, when it came time to write the check, mm-hmm. Germany got the check. The Japanese got a check. Mm-hmm. Not as much as the Germans, but they got a check. Mm-hmm. England was rebuilt. All that stuff.
That's right.
And the African
didn't get a dime.
The African homelands that when Europeans fight, they always talk about, how brutal African fighting is. But African fighting never got outside of Africa. I mean,
True.
World War I and World War II was white people fighting each other, Europeans fighting each other, and dragging everybody else in their shit. Yep. So the thing of it is this. The Africans didn't receive nothing. There was no Marshall Plan for the damages that the European tribal wars, because that's what World War II was. It was a European tribal war. So the European tribal war that went through Africa destroying stuff, ain't nobody say, well, we're sorry that we broke your house and raided your land. Look what Mussolini and the Italians did in Ethiopia. Look at the amount of people they murdered.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So but yet there was no checks going to the Ethiopian. And see, the thing of it is that a lot of y'all are mad because we stopped accepting that shit.
Exactly. Once we found out, not only was there no Marshall Plan for Ethiopia, there was no Marshall Plan for any other African nation that was impacted by any of these wars. There was no redress or rebuilding programs. And as a matter of fact, the exact opposite happened. European and Western nations found a new way to colonize Africa. And that's a whole...
But see, and I'm glad you brought that up, because see, that's what the African got. The Africans, they did not receive, like you said, a Marshall Plan. What they got was more abuse.
Exactly.
So once Europe rebuilt itself again after the European tribal wars of World War II, and when they got on their feet, what did they do? Those corporations and stuff went right into Africa and start more abuse.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So and so the thing of it is that we have to understand that when we talk about reparations, we're not talking about, as somebody said on one of our friends' pages, that we need to support we need to support programs that will uplift every struggling American. Well, first of all, define struggling. I'm gonna do a Bernie.
What does struggling mean?
What does struggling mean? Yeah,
what does struggling mean by struggling?
Because we have presented the data. Luqman Nation, Yvette Carnell, and others have presented the data showing the racial wealth gap, right? The racial wealth gap, it's a real thing, y'all. Racial wealth gap. And the data is available. Y'all on the internet, look it up. And a lot of y'all have seen it, and a lot of y'all are appalled by it, as you should be. The thing of it is that programs that uplift everybody doesn't attack that. You can't tell me if I'm 1,000 feet behind you, and you're 200 feet behind them, and then here come Bernie Sanders and Booker and all of them talking about, okay, all of y'all take 5 steps.
Right.
Well, damn it, the hell, I'm still 1,000 feet behind.
1,000 feet behind them.
You take 5 steps, you take 5 steps, and you take 5 steps, and all of y'all take 5 steps. But I'm 1,000 feet behind.
I'm still 1,000 feet behind. How
and
does
you
that
know
help?
that, and you know that, Bernie, because you love the statistics. So look, you know what? It's sad. Abdul Shahid Luqman is 1,000 steps behind. Jackie Luqman is 200 steps behind. And Jesse Ferris, that's right, I shouted you out. Jesse Ferris is, 3,000 feet ahead. But you know what? I'm going to address all these inequalities by having all of y'all take 5 steps.
Right. You'll all get free college tuition. What the fuck?
So now you see why that is bullshit, and why those of us who know better is not accepting that stuff from y'all when y'all talk about the new Green Deal and all this stuff. Look, none of that addresses 500 years of historical enslavement, of abuse, and everything else that goes with it.
Right.
I mean, when you really study how wealthy corporations, and I'm talking about during the time of slavery, that still exist today, who have gotten their start off the backs of slavery.
That's right.
And they still exist today. And you could go on the internet right now and they got lists of these companies that still exist that got started during the slave trade. And so the enslaved African, you have a lot of white folks say, well, I never owned slaves, I never did this, I never did that. The whole entire economy of the United States was built on slavery. Yep. So if you bought something, if you ate something, if you wore something, then guarantee you there was a slave that was you benefited from on some level.
If you went to college, if you went to somebody's college, and most of these colleges were and especially the Ivy Leagues participated in enslavement in some way and benefit. They sold slaves, they bought slaves. Georgetown University. Exactly. One of them. They just announced that a couple of years ago, and they're still fighting over what they're going to do about dealing with that legacy. But
see, look, this is the thing, and we'll move on. But the reason why we are so passionate about, because black folks are waking up. I've said this in a post. Black people are waking up. Oh, you always had woke black folks. You always had the woke black folks. But but sometimes things that don't always affect the masses. But you know how you could tell black folks was waking up? When they stayed home when Hillary was running. All right, let's talk about it now. See, I see y'all dropping off now because you don't like the truth. The thing of it is that black folks stayed home because black folks was waking up. They started to see that they had no friends. They had no friend in Obama. They had no friend in Hillary Clinton. And now that the new black media, I'm glad that shout out to Anoa Changa, because she's part of the new black media. The new black media right now is like, nah, man, we ain't shucking and jiving no more. We ain't trying to make you comfortable. We ain't trying to, soothe your feelings, because nobody gave a fuck about our feelings for 500 years. So we ain't trying to see, So now the new black media is saying like, oh, wait a minute. We have some serious issues here, Jackie, that we need to address. Now, if our allies don't like the way we presenting it, oh well, you know what I mean. But this, this is not personal. So social media. We think that, and I'm guilty of this sometimes. A lot of times we think that people don't pay attention to what we post, right? And they might not comment. And I'm talking about black people now. They might not comment, and they might, they ain't listening. But the thing of it is that a lot of them are. A lot of them are starting to read. A lot of them are starting to say, "I didn't know that.
Right.
I didn't know this." And they might not tell us. They might not hit a like. They might not that. But they're talking about it. And so what happened is that when Hillary was running, they was like, "Hey, this heifer called our kids predators. Did you know this heifer went around and said, do you know this heifer? Did you know this?" And so what happens? That information gets around, and they be like, "Man, I'm sitting home."
Right.
So
or like a lot of us did, you know what? We're gonna give Sanders a shot.
Or we're gonna give Sanders a shot. And that's the position that we came from. So, so the thing of it is, and I said in my post when Bernie stepped in that shit about not writing checks and that we, I said, the Democrats better stop treating us like children. Because see, Obama done messed it up for them.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
Obama done messed it up. You cannot come along singing Al Green and talking about you got hot sauce in your bag and all this stuff and putting hot sauce in green. Obama effed it up because now black folks are like, nah.
No, we can't take the classy smooth. What did Representative Omar tweet today? You know, we can't have another politician who's classy but murders people.
Right.
I'm sorry. Listen. Obama dropped more bombs in his 8 years on brown women, children, and innocent people all around the world. But he was classy though. But we can't. Too many of us were disappointed by that classy, smooth drone bomber who also didn't give a damn about the material conditions of black people in this country. So now we're taking those reins in our hands and we're taking people like Representative Clyburn to task. I got to show you this. Brewski is mad. He wants to say hi back there. Representative Clyburn, you know, of course, the anti-reparations folks are sharing this around. Representative James Clyburn dismisses idea of reparations as a fix for racial inequality, pushes another policy instead. Now, let's be clear. This 10-20-30 policy that Sanders mentioned in his talks came from a Clyburn policy. And the 10-20-30 policy is a policy that focuses on rural communities. Not urban. Okay. Now, oh, dang it! This is gonna be another show because we gotta make that note. Redlining occurred in mostly urban areas. Yeah. Redlining, targeting black people, literally creating ghettos that the government created for black people, mostly in urban areas. The 10-20-30 program does not focus on urban areas. It is a rural program that focuses a certain percentage of federal, incentives to investors to invest in communities that have been poverty-stricken for at least 30 years.
Now, let me ask you a question. So you don't think, because Bernie endorsed this. He said,
yes,
in place of reparations. This is what Bernie said on the Breakfast Club when he was being pushed by Charlemagne, mainly because the other ones were just clowning. But when Charlemagne said about reparation, Bernie made his stance, and so Charlemagne said, "So what do you support?" And he said, "Well, there's this Clyburn bill." Now you mean to tell me, Bernie Sanders? You know, and I'm gonna get off him, y'all. I know y'all mad, but you're gonna tell me that Bernie Sanders like a bill that he hasn't read, and knowing the statistic of how bad black people are doing, and you know that this bill mainly addresses rural communities. So what my point being, y'all, is that someone isn't doing their homework when it comes to us.
Right. Right.
And I know you don't like me saying this. I know you don't like me saying this. But see, someone hasn't been doing their homework, because as serious as reparations is, the subject of reparations is, and the amount, how can I put it? And all of the areas that deserves attention because of our oppression here, you're going to say that there's a 10-20-30 bill you like. And when we read it, I'm not a lawyer, but when Jackie showed it to me, I said, well, this is rural areas. You mean to tell me that you think that is sufficient in place of reparation? Someone hasn't been doing their homework. And if you're close to Bernie, if you know his phone number, anything, if you eat dinner with him or whatever, if you have his ear, tell him that the Luqmans love him. But the Luqmans, out of love and concern, have to say, do your homework, Bernie, when it comes to this issue.
Right. I mean, so aside from the rural-urban dichotomy that exists with this 10-20-30 business, that which automatically to me renders this idea of this 10-20-30 program just completely null and void in addressing racial inequality. Clyburn's reasoning for not backing reparations, and in a minute we're going to talk about.
I already know why he's not backing
Well, we know why, but we got to make the case for our fan. We got to make exactly. He got his check. What did somebody tell us one day? Oh, I'm gonna be all right. Okay, so and that's exactly how I shouldn't try to assume what this man thinks, but Clyburn's reasoning for not backing reparations, which now I think we need to make it clear. That reparations does not exist. It is not intended to address racial inequality.
Now, put that in layman's terms. So, for some of us, explain, like, the book they say such and such for dummies.
Yes, so, like reparations for dummies.
Yeah, reparations for dummies.
Okay, we'll stick a pin in that, and I'm gonna tell you what's wrong with what Clyburn says
hold up. We're gonna take a break because Brewski got to go to the bathroom. Hold that thought. We're gonna take a break, and we'll be right back.
All right. Hold on. All right, folks. Welcome back to Live and Coffee, Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation. I am Jacqueline Luqman, and Mr. Abdushahid Luqman will return shortly with Brewski Luqman, who demands attention. So we are after our little break. So let's get into the problem with what Representative Clyburn said about reparations. This is so incredibly disingenuous, I think. So Clyburn says that the fear is that reparations would only lead to disputes over who's actually eligible for recompense, quote, due to the sprawling family trees that have evolved in the generation since slavery was abolished, end quote, reported the Post and Courier. He also argued that some white people who've never even felt the effects of race-based discrimination could wind up claiming to have connections to former slaves just to be compensated. Is that a fair way to do it? He asked. I say not. And of course, Clyburn, they talk about Clyburn's 10-20-30 formula, which is already in some federal policies, which would direct 10% of government funds to counties where 20% or more of the local population has lived below the poverty line over the past 30 years. He says, to me, that's a much better way to deal with what reparations is supposed to be about. I don't understand how he feels like 10-20-30 is a better way to deal with what reparations for African Americans are supposed to be about, when 10-20-30 does not focus on Black people. As a matter of fact, as our viewer over on YouTube, Chalky White, mentioned, that in Clyburn's policy, Black people are actually mentioned dead last in the policy. And in the counties, in these 10 or 20 counties, we're talking about 20 counties all across the United States. Are any of those counties majority Black? Are those counties historically Black? That's the only way this policy would address the issue of addressing racial inequality directed at Black people. Otherwise, Clyburn's concerned that white people could claim some lineage with former enslaved people, and that's why he doesn't back reparations, but his policy is basically mostly for white people. So it's this kind of ridiculous bait and switch that we've let these politicians do when they conflate the issue of reparations with the issue of addressing racial inequality. Folks, that's two different issues. Reparations is not meant to address racial inequality. Reparations is restitution. It is settlement for a claim. It's literally like if someone breaks into my house and they cause material, monetary damage that I am going to experience lasting harm from, I can go to court, file a claim, and get restitution from the person who committed the crime against me. That's what reparations is. It is the settlement of a claim of injustice, historical injustice committed against Africans who were enslaved in this country and around the world, because people don't understand that there is a global movement for reparations for Africans throughout the diaspora that I believe we need to connect with in order to continue this fight. Malcolm X even said that Black people need to take our claims for reparations to the United Nations. And he was right, because what happened? The United Nations came out a couple years ago and said, yeah, the United States owes Black people reparations for enslavement and the legacy of slavery that has persisted in the United States. Now, we have a government that doesn't want to recognize the United Nations authority when it comes to anything that has to do with Black people in this country and Africans on the continent. But trust me when I tell you, trust Luqman Nation when we tell you, y'all, that the United States is not unclear about what reparations really are. This is another reason that Bernie Sanders' question about what are reparations is disingenuous. It's not like people don't know. These politicians do not have an unclear idea of what reparations are, when not only do Jewish survivors of the Holocaust receive millions of dollars in reparations from other countries' governments. But here's something I bet you didn't know. This is from NPR. This is from last month, February 7th, 2019. I know you didn't know this. Around 3/4 of a century after the Holocaust ended with the extermination of 6 million Jews, some survivors as well as victims' families and estates, survivors as well as victims' families and estates are receiving reparations from France in acknowledgement of the government's role in deporting them to Nazi death camps via French trains. This is where the United States comes into this conversation about reparations and how we know that there is no politician who doesn't understand what they are. 49 people who made it out of the Holocaust alive are receiving around $400,000 each, according to former Ambassador Stuart Eisenstadt, the State Department's expert advisor on Holocaust-era issues, who helped negotiate the agreement. The State Department of the United States of America helped to negotiate reparations between 49 Jewish survivors of the Holocaust and their families, and France. He said 32 spouses of deportees who died will get up to $100,000 depending on how long their spouse lived. Heirs and estates of deportees or their spouses are also getting paid. Ooh, this is the juicy part.
But what are we told?
You can't. I think there are better ways to handle racial inequality than writing a check. But we ain't talking about racial inequality right now. We talking about justice right now.
Exactly.
We talking about justice. We talking about settling this claim of historic racial injustice committed against a particular group of people. Mm-hmm. Let's deal with this claim. Don't act like you don't know how to deal with the claim. Don't act like you don't know what the claim is. Don't act like you don't know what it looked like. The State Department is clear on what reparations are. The money is the second and last round of payments.
Say that again.
The money. The Benjamins. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. Is the second and last round of payments from $60 million France provided following a 2014 agreement in exchange for receipts relinquishing the right to sue. Now, this is what happens in these reparations negotiations with other countries and aggrieved groups of people. The legal representatives for the aggrieved group of people negotiates with the government of the country they are seeking restitution from, and they decide on an amount of money or a form of compensation in exchange for, we're not going to sue you.
Right.
We're not going to sue you because if we sued you,
you're going to pay more.
If we sued you, we'd own your country. But we're not trying to take all your stuff. We just want what's fair.
Right.
This is what happens in every negotiation.
Right.
All right. So
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I think this is the last part. The State Department that I was interested in anyway. The State Department's Holocaust Deportation Claims Program was charged with processing applications and divvying up the funds specifically for non-French victims deported from France via the state-owned railway system, SNCF. Don't ask me what that means. I don't know. Probably State National something of France. Cargo of France, probably. That group had been ineligible for compensation under prior agreements and settlements.
They said eligible or ineligible?
That group had been ineligible for compensation under prior agreements and settlements. So, folks, when people tell you that they don't know what reparations are, that we don't understand what reparations are in this country. Everybody has a different idea of reparations. No, they don't. Everybody knows what reparations are when it comes to Jewish survivors of the Holocaust. Not only do people understand that in this instance with this agreement with the State Department, please note that this was not just one settlement.
Right.
This was several settlements that has been going on for a long time that the United States State Department has been involved in.
All right, now let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Now, they said France gave $60 million.
Yes.
Did the Holocaust happen in France?
No. France was complicit in deporting Jews to Nazi death camps. That is what this settlement is about.
Right, right. So France took the responsibility and said, okay, our bad.
Yeah,
Right.
we contributed to the either we contributed to the abuse of these people.
Right.
Yes. Uh-huh. I mean, it okay, maybe it's still complicated for people. All right. Maybe some people still don't get it.
I just don't understand how France and the Jewish representatives and everybody else involved, I just don't understand how they arrived to all of these agreements, but then when it comes to us, it's complicated.
It's too
we don't
complicated.
know what does it mean.
That's
this and that and the other.
Oh, that's the other thing that was in here. The State Department's Holocaust Deportation Claims Program was charged with processing applications and divvying up the funds. Now,
so what is funds?
Funds are money, but
no, because I want this to constantly be said.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because there appears to be a certain segment of the progressives, and not just white, blacks too, that feel that we can't handle money. Because because they're when I hear people talk about reparations, they're fine with this, they're fine with that, they're fine with this. And so what about the check? Oh no. And I read and somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody on social media really brought up a good point that I felt that when we did the show tonight, I was going to bring it up too. And I want to give this person credit, for this, but I can't remember the name right now. But this person said that this is only once again putting out the stereotype that black people can't handle money.
Exactly.
So I know Chris Rock, but he's a comedian. Chris Rock made fun about reparations, talking about white folks would be smart to give it to us because they'll just get it right back. Because this whole stereotype of black people being irresponsible with money, all we want to do is bling and all this stuff. But but this is the thing. I don't care what black folks do with the money, and you shouldn't care. You know what I mean? I mean, if say for example, and we know that the estimated cost of reparations is a lot higher than what I'm going to say. But say for example, if the United States government said, okay, fine, fine. All right, how many African Americans is in this country? About between 40, 50 million. Okay. We're going to give each African American family $1 million. Tax-free, $1 million. That's your reparations. Don't come back no more.
Right.
So $50 million, 50 million African Americans. All right, say it's 50 million heads of household, $1 million a piece, $50 million, which is pittance for the United States government. Now check this out. But we know reparations are higher. But we're just going to agree on that point. So if we give each head of household $50 million, why should anyone care how that head of household or how that family spend that money?
Well, I think that's a great point, and I got another article to point to highlight that point. But the idea that people don't understand that reparations does not exist to address racial inequality, that's also this false. I forgot this part in this NPR article. NPR, which so I know everybody is very quiet in NPR.
The reparations debate is so
they don't get excited about much on NPR. I don't know how they stay so calm about so many things. Oh. So this is from the same article. They're talking about one of the recipients of the reparations payment. The Vienna-born man died in 2014 at the age of 93, but Eisenstadt said his heirs are receiving around $400,000 under the agreement.
Okay.
Now, this is the issue where people talk about the difference between reparations that the Japanese survivors of the internment camps received and what African Americans are demanding in regard to reparations, because people always say, well, the Japanese who received reparations were directly impacted. They were actual survivors of the internment camps. Okay, that's fine. But it's not as if there is not precedent for family members, descendants, and heirs of a crime to receive reparations. again.
Right.
Here.
And I just want to just make a side point is that, by the way, the plan for reparations that Professor Ogletree and them worked on, the Japanese lawyers also worked on that. These Japanese lawyers who helped the Japanese internment camp survivors, these Japanese lawyers pitched in with black with Professor Ogletree and all of them to come up with so you know.
Ooh, stick a pin in that,
yeah,
because I got something for that too. So, but here is I hope this sounds familiar. In all, Eisenstadt around 900 people have been approved to receive reparations.
No, we're still talking about
this. We're still talking about just the idea that people, the arguments that people use when they say that reparations, cutting a check isn't going to solve racial injustice. Well, reparations isn't supposed to solve or address an injustice. And here is what they say. Here's what it's about: justice and recognition and feeling acknowledgement. Greg Schneider, Executive Vice President of the Conference on Jewish Material.
Right?
That ain't
no
nobody.
Big love
These folks are not like. These people are not like. No, these reparations are going to make you treat us right now. No, you see, Germany pays reparation to Jewish survivors of the Holocaust and their families. They still do.
Right.
They also enact legislation to criminalize public expression of fascism, anti-Semitism, and Nazism.
Right.
So there are reparations to express justice, to give recognition to an aggrieved people and the crime that was committed against them, and to give them a feeling of acknowledgement that we recognize you were done wrong. That's what reparations
and what they
is.
also did, because you brought up the part about the legislation of outlawing the Nazi Party and stuff, and they're also ensuring that it doesn't happen again.
Exactly. So that's why there are reparations, and then there is legislation to address racial inequality.
But
they're two separate things, and they're both needed, and they're both owed.
But you know what? Reparations, and this is not, reparations. Why black people have why we have a hard time with the whole reparations issue? It's bad marketing.
What do you mean?
It's bad. Reparations has been synonymous with Jewish suffering. I mean, when you talk about reparations, then people automatically think Holocaust, or they automatically think. But when it comes, it's the way that we have been conditioned to see each other. So no one says that reparations for the Jews is a handout.
This is true, and here's another point that mirrors everything we always say.
Right.
There is no inherited wealth, Schneider said, of survivors whose family assets may have been stolen in the Holocaust. They may have been denied education opportunities. When others were in high school, they were in Auschwitz, so they weren't able to build careers.
So I could take that sentence and say that they may have been denied educational opportunities. When others were in high school, they were in the fields picking cotton.
Come on now.
And and the law stated. Now see, in that sentence right there, you don't see where a government made a law. They're not addressing a law that, put that thing back up. They're not addressing a law that made those conditions. What they, they say, right. They're not, so black folks would die or could be killed if they read or they would learn how to read.
Right.
And the reason why it was a law, because governments, I don't care if it was the Confederate government said slaves under the penalty of punishment of death shouldn't be educated, right? Because they're chattel. So the thing of it is that I'm glad that we brought this up, because again, when we start talking about reparations, it depends on how we've been conditioned to see each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm saying this because I think this needs to be said. The way that, white supremacy views blacks is that we can take punishment. So when we bring up all these grievances, they was like, but y'all built for that.
But y'all are built for it.
Y'all built for that.
Y'all strong.
Right. And I think that is something important to bring up.
That's a great point.
Right. Because white supremacy has taught white folks and blacks and others that black people were made to suffer. And,
Yeah.
and what I'm saying is that, you know, they, you know, this is just their lot in life. But when you talk about the suffering of Jewish thing, then the humanity thing comes up.
Right.
Now it's all of a sudden about treating fellow human beings this way.
Right.
All of a sudden now it has a more humane face. Reparations is humane when it comes to them.
Right.
But or others. But reparations is just, you know, it's government cheese for us.
Exactly. And you can't give out the cheese to the blacks.
Right. Because you know what happened? You give blacks reparations, they already lazy, so they ain't gonna.
So that ain't gonna do nothing.
Exactly.
But okay, so you brought up the point of the lawyers for the Japanese survivors of the internment camps working with Dr. Charles Ogletree.
Right, and I believe, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that there was also some people who also assisted with Jewish reparations too.
Sure.
So it was a very diverse effort. You know?
But it was deeper than that. It's actually deeper than that because, again, this is from NPR, and it's not like NPR is our go-to source. This was just one, you know, some of the best articles.
Not radical.
They are really not radical. NPR. No, we have to keep our voices down so that no one mistakes us for being radical. So this is what is important. Let me see. Here it is. And I know we're going all over the place tonight. We're not going to cover anything tonight. We're about to wrap up.
Oh, we have a smart, very intelligent audience. Plus, trust me, they're right with us.
But all of this stuff is connected. I got to hit the Native American settlements before we leave for this night, though, because you said something about not caring how anybody spends that money. Yeah, okay.
So we're going to go there?
Yes, we're going to go there. But let's talk about the collaboration between the attorneys for the Japanese internment survivors and the attorneys for the legal case for reparations that was spearheaded by Dr. Charles Ogletree and many others that we're going to give you links to their organizations. We'll talk about them in a follow-up show. But it goes deeper than that. It goes farther back than that because John Tatishi says the experience was both humiliating and disorienting. This was of the internment camps. We came out of these camps with a sense of shame and guilt of having been considered betrayers of our country. He says that after the war, most families never spoke about it. There were no complaints, no big rallies or demands for justice because it was not the Japanese way. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
But decades later, and inspired by the civil rights movement,
those troublemaking black folks,
the Japanese American Citizens League launched a contentious campaign for redress. It divided the community along generational lines. Don't that sound familiar?
Yep.
Tateshi became a leader of the movement. This right here blew my mind. This half a sentence is like right in the middle of this article. And most people would look at it and just read it and go on. But listen, y'all, listen to me. We have inspired generations of different groups of people to fight for the justice they deserve after being treated like shit by this country.
Who was the hero of the Latino farm workers? Cesar.
Chavez.
Was it Cesar Chavez? Well, he mentioned Martin Luther King and them as being his inspiration.
We have inspired the Japanese to fight for reparations for themselves, for these internment camps. We know that we have inspired the American Indian movement to fight for self-determination for Native people. We have inspired farm workers, migrant farm workers.
We inspired poor whites who was working with the Black Panthers.
And here we are sitting here believing people like Clyburn that we can't do. So, okay, I'm getting emotional. I need to put my NPR voice.
Noah said that, I can't pronounce that.
Just talked with Ayatoro from Incobra earlier today. And see, that we gotta have another conversation about this hashtag ADOS movement. That's
because I think
problem.
I think some people and you know, I don't want to delve into a lot of it today, but people, and I use it as a what do you call it, acronym?
Yeah.
Well, I use ADOS because I don't like spelling the whole thing out. But I am not a part of that movement. And I'm not saying that like there's something wrong with the movement, but I'm just not a part of it. But I will say this about Jackie, about this whole reparations thing, and I think that black people are starting to realize this. Malcolm has said it. Martin Luther King was about to say it before they killed him. Mm-hmm. But what he was going to say is, well, I think Martin Luther King did say it. But the thing is that we have to stop appealing to people through morality. Yeah. We have to stop wrapping this reparations issue for us in morality, like y'all need to do the right thing, because apparently they don't want to do the right thing.
They're not going to do the right thing.
And it's not just the government.
Just because it's
right.
I mean,
it's not just the government. I've sat on a lot of y'all threads. I'm talking to y'all right now. A lot of y'all threads with a lot of y'all Facebook friends who claim they're progressive, who claim that that they're against Trump and they're against racism, they're against this and against that. But trust me, the skirt had fell down on a lot of y'all. Yeah, I'm serious, on a lot of them. And and the thing of it is because when you said earlier about this whole misunderstanding that reparations have to heal racial justice, no other group. You didn't see any Jewish group say we have to love Germans.
Nope.
Ain't no Jewish group said that we have to love the Nazis or we have to love the anti-Semites.
No, the Japanese didn't say we have to embrace the American military now.
No, none of those people say that. But in order for us to get something, and this is why it's insulting, because in order for us to get something, then it's like white folks have to say, but do you love us? I mean, I understand what you're saying, and yeah, we treated you guys pretty bad.
Are you mad at us?
You guys, we treated you guys pretty bad, and I mean, it's a thought, but I'm just not feeling no love right now. I'm just not feeling no. I mean, your response to this is quite hostile, and
you're being divisive.
I mean, you're being divisive. It's quite hostile, and I mean, I want to support you though, but I'm just not feeling the love right now, and you won't allow me in your spaces. And, how can I be an ally and you just won't let me in?
You just won't let me be in your spaces.
You just won't let me in. Right.
So okay, we have proven, we hope, that this idea that politicians are running around asking what reparations mean, we hope we've proven that's a lie.
Yeah, because you look, just like you told me. You said that when they have these town halls, there's no random people there. These people have been vetted. They have been vetted. You're not going to allow people you don't know to be behind a candidate.
Look, that town hall with Bernie Sanders was right here in Washington, D.C. Trust me when I tell you they won't go let Jackie and Abdus Luqman up in that joint.
Not.
They were not.
Definitely not.
They won't go let us up in there. They had a bunch of people that were absolutely representatives of the Democratic Party calling themselves going to trip Bernie Sanders up. And honest to God, if Sanders hadn't had such a shitty answer to reparations, he wouldn't have gotten tripped up like that.
If he would have, as we said, folks, if Sanders would have done his homework. We always talk about, people in Washington and people in politics as being, what's that word you used? For lack of a better term, disconnected from reality.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Right, in a bubble.
Yeah.
So even our favorite politicians could be in the bubble. Mm-hmm. The fact that Bernie knew that the issue of reparations of Black Lives Matter was a problem for him when he ran first. Mm-hmm. Then what do you do when you want to run again? You want to make sure that you tight on those issues.
Exactly.
Because you know they're going to come at you.
And at CNN, who is going to come at you. So you know they're going to be laying the extra trap for you. Why you walk into it, Bernie?
Right. But see,
why?
They all have these handlers that is taking cues from that leaked email.
Yep.
Don't promise Black people nothing. Cory Booker on the Breakfast Club.
Same thing.
So what is your Black agenda, Cory? Well, I have an agenda for the American people.
America.
I have an agenda for American people. And then Booker comes with, and I gotta say this, and I don't take credit for this. This actually comes from the Black Authority, who I listen to a lot, and he made this point. Cory Booker sat on a Breakfast Club and said that his plan was, because Charlamagne was pushing him, and shout out to Charlamagne, you done found your black card. But
again, right, after he has lost it multiple times.
But we're going to stamp it this time. You can come to the barbecue or something. So anyway, Charlamagne kept pushing him, and he said, "But what is your black agenda?" He said, "Well, I have an agenda for American people, which means I ain't gonna give you Negroes nothing. You know what I mean? And so then Charlemagne wouldn't let it go. Charlemagne said, so then Corey was forced to come out with this little punk ass plan called baby bonds. Now, baby bonds, now this is what, and I'm look, my word and offends you, this is why I'm saying it. Because all of y'all is telling black folks, we can't afford this. The same people, black and white and others, who are against reparations are always saying it will cost too much. It will break the bank. We just can't afford it. No one sits back and talk about the trillions that we spent so far in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nobody's out there with their pitchforks in front of the Pentagon after 21 trillion was lost. You know, lost. And you know what? It's one thing to lose money, right? But this is the attitude they got. It's one thing to lose money, but when nobody gives a shit that they lost $21 trillion, when there's no investigation, there's no hearings.
And the Department of Defense even said, well, you know, our accounting system really isn't set up in a way that we can account for every dollar. Are you serious? So the Department of Defense just admitted, yeah, we're going to lose some money. And, you know, we don't care.
Right.
Because we know you're not going to do anything about it. So,
but my point being is, you know, so they say, oh, well, it costs too much, is this and that and the other. And but what I'm saying is that all of these candidates, Kamala, look what Elizabeth Warren said. Oh, I believe in reparations, but everybody got to get them. Hold up, you mean Bill Gates gets reparations? You mean Warren Buffett gets reparations? But I know what she meant. She meant that all oppressed groups get reparations. Well, let me tell you something. And black folks, listen to this. Stop being cowards when it comes to reparations. Because I listen to some of y'all. Well, we don't know what that's going to look like. It's not your job to know what it looks like. Well, we don't know how it's that. We don't know who really was a descendant of slavery. It's not your job to find out. Well, we don't understand. Should it be like, should we get land? Should we get this? It's not your problem. The victim doesn't go. A victim of a crime. It's not the responsibility of any victim of a crime to redress their own justice.
That is the responsibility of our legal representative.
Exactly.
In negotiating, what did I say? What did I say about how the legal representative of Jewish survivors of the Holocaust did with the State Department in France? They negotiated a settlement.
Yeah. Do you think that the survivors of Auschwitz and all of these other horrible things, do you think they actually had a committee and said, we're going to sit together and we're going to come up with a plan? No.
That's not how
what
it
they
works.
said was Germany did this to us, so they're responsible. Or whoever was responsible for our mistreatment, y'all got to figure out a way to address this. And see, we have to stop letting white people play dumb with us. We have to stop letting some white people play dumb with us and sit up here and talk about, would you educate? Check.
Yes.
I would love.
That was hilarious.
I would love to know, but if you could just educate.
If you could just, I know that you posted some link. Somebody actually said this to me a couple, last week before last on somebody's thread, and I am so sorry for cussing out that woman on your thread, Marcus, but she made me mad. And I posted links to articles that woman could read. And that white lady said, I know you posted links and I could read them, but I would rather have you educate me. Heifer, I'm not, do I look like, as my friend Danoa says, do I look like movement mammy to you?
Right.
I'm not, but you know what? If you want me to educate you, here's my PayPal. Pay my mortgage. We don't do this for free anymore. We've done it for free for a minute because we just enjoy it. We love the history. And y'all have been really appreciative and really receptive, and that's great. But we got bills. This is emotional labor, especially now. This is a lot of emotional work. Y'all pissing us off. Y'all gonna have to pay us some money.
And the reason why that we should start demanding compensation, because you know what? It hurts when you do it for free and y'all don't do shit about it. But at least if you don't do shit about it, at least I got some money out of it.
Exactly. I'm like, well, they pissing me off, but hey, the mortgage paid this month. Anyway, but all right. So we talked about legal representatives, and we're gonna have to stop after this and pick this conversation up next week, because then we're going to talk about, next week we're going to pick up on what I talked about earlier today. Why white people, how white people going to tell us what's good for us when white people don't know what's good for them.
We have to have a part 2 for that, because we can't do that in 15 minutes or 5, whatever time we got left, because some of y'all really pissing us off with this, what's the attitude? Well, anyway, I mean, some of y'all are pissing us off with this, whitey knows best thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like
condescending. We know, if one more white progressive tells us that, Bernie is the best bet for you.
Oh, yeah. Choose your words carefully.
But see, how are
or if you want Bernie to win, then you need to support programs that uplifts all struggling people. We have just told you the data is there that everybody is struggling a little differently. There is no universal struggle in America. There are some who are struggling. There are some who are struggling, and there's some of them who, damn it, I'm struggling.
You just scared the dog.
Damn it, I'm struggling.
Bruce is like, oh my God.
So you got 3 types of, you got different types of struggling. You got some people who, honey, I don't know if we can pay the bills this week. And you got some people who's like, well, I don't know this. But then you got some people who's like, we got to live in that tent out there.
Yep.
So you can't sit up there and say, you can't address all of these type of things with one blanket.
Right.
And they know that.
And they know that. Not only do they know that, but next week when we come back after we leave with this point, we are going to show you in detail how this whole conversation about people not knowing what reparations are and not knowing how they would look, and we need legislation to address racial injustice, and no, there's actually legislation that will answer all of those questions. Yeah. And we're also going to talk about next week how Black people and other white progressive politicians before us have tried to pass the kinds of policies that these folks claim they want so bad out of Bernie Sanders.
They weren't always Democrats, because you know what comes to my mind? Mitt Romney's father.
True. I gotta add him in my notes too. But see, these white folks, these white, especially the older ones, I give the younger ones a pass because I understand you don't know the history. But after next week, you're not gonna have any more of an excuse for not knowing the history. But these older folks, some of y'all know this history, and you know that you have rejected the very policies you are telling Black people we have to support now. But those policies either came from a politician who recognized the need to focus on racial justice at the same time, or those policies came from Black people. But they weren't good enough for you then.
Well, it wasn't that they wasn't good enough. They rejected them because, again, they didn't want Black folks to have nothing. Let me tell you something. We showed that piece of film, vintage film, when white people was getting, see, they call them relief checks back in them days.
Right.
See, they welfare checks now. But back in them days, they were relief checks. White folks, and I forgot what town it was.
I think it was Chicago.
Yeah, it was Chicago. They had a parade because the government sent relief checks. It was during the Depression. Mm-hmm. White folks wasn't ashamed. They was getting up there showing the camera, I got mine.
That's right.
I got mine.
Thank you, Mayor, for handing it was a white lady.
Yeah, did not the band play?
They played the band
cheerleaders march.
And let me tell you, remember what she said? She said, thank you, Mayor, for this check. We're so glad that our mayor gave us this money. We really needed this money. And now maybe we'll have a chance to go on vacation.
She did say that. And now, so let's look at this. So when poverty had a white face, then it was, they were down on their luck.
Right. Right. And let's have a parade.
But see, and I know we're having fun with this, but again, it goes back to how we're conditioned to see each other. When poverty was white, even now, Clyde Burns 10-30-20 thing, rural areas. Now, even now, the thing to do now is we have to talk about Appalachia. We have to listen. We have to talk about. We have to mention the poor whites. We have to mention it, and I agree we do. But the thing of it is that even the poor whites in Appalachia are better off than us because a lot of them got land. A lot of them own their homes. Oh yeah, they might not got as much money as the white folks in the urban areas.
Right.
You know, and they might be, but see, there's different standards of poor.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's different standards of poor. You got farmers, I mean, people in Appalachia who have land. You know what I mean? And their definition of poverty, you know, they're poor to them, coal mines, the clothes and stuff like that.
Right.
But they still, when you look at the data, they still have more wealth than black folks.
Right. Right. So next week we're going to cover all of that. See, this is a lot. This is not. What now? What else you got?
I just want to just say this.
Yes.
To the Bernie Sanders, the white Bernie Sanders supporters who would, some of them, not all y'all, some of y'all saw the light, but some of you white Bernie Sanders, and the black ones too, I'm going to get to y'all. The white Bernie Sanders supporters who are upset because black folks are finally speaking up for what we want. Thanks, Obama. You know, and starting to make this an issue. Don't get mad at us. You know, those of us who are talking about reparations. What you need to do is go to Bernie. You know, don't you know, because see, you know, if somebody said, well, you know, I just feel that, you know, it's going to sabotage Bernie's chances and this and that and the other. Well, that's not my problem.
It is not my problem.
It's not my problem. It's not black people's problem. You know what I mean? So the thing of it is that we've been team playing so long, and that's the reason why a lot of the rumblings are happening, because black folks are starting to see, man, we've been team players for so long, but we never get nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We never get the trophy.
Charlemagne said to Booker, Cory Booker on the Breakfast Club, he said when Booker was, you know, his all-American programs and this and that and the other, so Charlemagne said, rise and tide, lift all boats. He said, but I don't see that where I live.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're in D.C. Now, you want to talk about rise and tide, lift all boats? You can go to every ward in this city just about and see that rise and tide, but come to 78th Ward.
That's right.
And you know what I mean? So, no, it doesn't lift all boats. And I wanted to say, y'all want, you go to Bernie or go to his handlers, and if y'all really love Bernie so much, tell Bernie you got to do right by African Americans, and you got to address their grievances, and in a proper way. Right. Right? Now, you black folks out there, because we had a couple black Bernie Sanders supporters who came at us, stop being cowards. Stop being cowards and start learning the history of your country. If you're a native born American, start studying the history of how your people was mistreated, and tell me if you're okay with that. And tell me, does somebody not have to address that? Right. Does this government and everybody else who participate in that type of treatment have to address that? Now, good, but stop being cowards, because and look, Jackie, we're middle-aged. We've been around our people. Like we said, take them in the laundry room. So we're going into the laundry room. A lot of you black folks are saying this stuff because you don't want white folks mad, and you don't want white folks to be uncomfortable with you. So you sit up there and say, well, you know, those troublemaking Negroes with the reparations talk. I'm not, because this is, you know, people, this is not a game. This is how black people have been socialized in this country. Every black person got two voices. They got the voice that we talk at the barbecue, and they got that office. Voice. I love Jackie's office voice. See, I'm a truck driver. I don't have an office voice. But I sit back. I mean, I can switch it up. But what I'm saying is that, you know, but that's how, because that was part of our survival here. We had to make white people feel safe with us. So we had to do these things in order to survive. And that is still with us. You know why? Because those conditions have been passed down. Our grandparents, our parents, they all told us that this is how you have to be. So a lot of you black folks, stop conning these white folks. Stop conning them. Because see, they believe in what you say. But you know, and I know, and Jackie know, that you're just trying to make them comfortable and you don't want to piss them off. That's those days have to be over. Speak with your black voice.
I can't believe you just said that. Speak with your black voice.
Speak with your black voice. But not at the office. You're not at the office. Speak with your black voice. They'll understand. They'll understand, and they'll still love you.
They probably and you know what? Even if they don't, that's fine.
Right.
That's fine too. Because if they don't love you because you stand up for yourself,
then they were never
family,
your allies.
They were never your allies in the first place. So let's end on this point, because we've been talking about we touched on legal representation for people who settle grievances for an aggrieved people, and how one of the criticisms of reparations for black people, what? Oh.
Let me just warn them. Put your seatbelt on. Put your seatbelt on, right? And turn the radio down.
Listen, one of the criticisms that we have heard from so many people about reparations for black people is that...
But what about the Native Americans? I mean, if we give black people stuff, then...
We have to give Native Americans stuff.
Right.
You have to give reparations to Native Americans. And the idea that people are concerned with how black people will spend their money.
We're the only group of people that everybody's concerned about how we spend money.
Okay.
We ain't never had nothing to spend. We ain't nothing to judge us from.
Okay, there's opinion and then there's fact. I don't know what else y'all want me to say. Listen. Native American tribes have been suing the United States government for the violation of over 300 treaties that involve management of land that was stolen from the Native people by the U.S. government. And there's a whole lot of backstory behind this that I'm not really clear on. And I know that we have many of our Native relatives who are our friends who will clear all of this up for us. These settlements do not cover every Native American person. Let's make that clear. These settlements that happened under Obama don't cover every Native American tribe, because the United States government did a really messed up thing with Native American people, like they do with all oppressed people, indigenous people. You can't be registered as a federally recognized Native tribe and get benefits or protection or be recognized as sovereign or sue the government for land rights unless you are a member of a tribe that is recognized by the government that fucking oppressed you and stole your land. That's how messed up this whole system is.
Look. I want you to return. I want you to honor your treaties that you made with us, sir. You show your engine.
That's exactly what they do.
Yeah, you show your engine. Hold on. Hey, Sam, check that book and see if he a real engine.
If we got that tribe in there, that's not that tribe ain't in this book that we have here.
They sit up there. I never heard of that tribe. You sure you ain't making that up?
So the Native American tribes, several of them got together. I think this particular lawsuit that resulted in a $3.4 billion settlement between the United States government under the Obama administration and several Native American tribes was settled in 2010. Let's see, what was I looking for? The deal follows a class action lawsuit filed in 1996, which accuses the U.S. Department of the Interior of failing to account for and provide revenue from a trust fund representing the value of Indian assets managed by the government. Again, I mean, the ridiculousness, the duplicity, just the evil nature of the United States government is that they took land from Native American people that they slaughtered so that they could take their land. And the surviving Native tribes, they said, okay, we'll manage the land for you because y'all don't know what to do with it, you savages. So we'll manage the land for you. And in managing the land, we will give you the money. Here's the problem. You know the federal government never gave them the money.
Like
so,
they never gave us the mules. Or the
like
land,
just
right?
like they took the land and the
took that
mules
back
from us.
Like they took our money in the Freedmen's Bank.
Like they took our money that we put in the Freedmen's Bank,
Yeah.
millions, tens of millions of dollars that a bunch of newly emancipated.
Say that again.
Tens of millions of dollars.
Now you know why I asked you to repeat that, because all of you folks out there, black, white, and others, who are afraid that black folks would just fuck up a check. Remember, we are descendants of people who had the Freedmen's Bank, who saved up millions of dollars through hard work. You know, this whole thing about hard work and being responsible. Well, our ancestors were doing that. But guess what happened? Guess how their response? Guess how them being responsible was rewarded. Some white guy just came in and said, "Oh, there's money right there. We'll just take it.
We'll take it and we'll invest it in these speculations in the railroads. What are these Negroes going to do with that money? Nothing." And they lost every dime.
Yeah.
That's what happened. So a bunch of native tribes got together, sued the government.
Hold on, before you go on. I just that right there.
What?
Point to that up there where it says Obama says the settlement. Because this just pissed me off. I saw that.
Oh, Obama says in a statement?
No. Go up there. We see by the Facebook side. Obama. This is why I know y'all came at me on my page when I said a lot of y'all came at me when I said when Obama lectured black men again about you don't need 7 women twerking around you if you're secure in your sexuality, right? And I said that he loves shitting on black men. Oh, and then, the vipers came out and all. But this is the thing. This is what pisses me off, Jackie. I thanks for indulging me in this. Because this is the first black president, y'all. This is the first black president. Obama says the settlement for the Native Americans clears the way for reconciliation. You know what he told us? No, I don't. No, listen. When he was asked by Ta-Nehisi Coates about reparations, I don't support reparations. I don't think we need that. That's a handout. We don't need them. No. I mean, and then go to Howard and tell black students, well, you have to understand the racists.
Right. Yeah. Put yourself in their shoes.
Put yourself in there. Now, has anybody ever went to a synagogue or a college that with mostly Jewish students and told them that you have to understand Hitler? I mean, put yourself in Hitler's shoes.
Nobody said.
Has anybody ever said that? Has anybody ever went to the Chinese when the Japanese imperialism was going on during World War II? Did anybody go to the Chinese and say, well, you put yourself in the Japanese shoes? Or to the Koreans? So we could go on and on. So the thing of it is that this is the first black president.
Right. Now, then let me just talk about some. I know there are a lot of avenues that we can go down with these discussions about how other groups of people have been compensated for the crimes committed against them that were committed against them by this government. Right. But somehow when it comes to black folks, everybody got is stereotypes and excuses. And a bunch of that. And I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
Even Brewski agreed with that.
Even Brewski's mad at that shit. Yeah. So we trying to give you all the ammunition for. And I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that I'm displaying the screen. I had to pop over to YouTube because I hate to ignore folks on YouTube. Chalky White, who's one of our I know he's one of our favorite characters from one of our favorite shows.
Boardwalk Empire.
He brought up a good point. We didn't even bring it up. And Bernie Sanders doesn't know what reparations is. How come he voted for the Just Act? Look up the Just Act. Yes, we're going to give you a link for it. And understand that Bernie Sanders understands full well what reparations are. But let's wrap up with this. In making the announcement then in 2009 or whenever this was, Obama remembered Cobell for her honorable work. She said, in 2009, she said that many represented in the class action lawsuit subsist in the direst poverty, and the settlement is significantly less than the full amount to which the Indians are owed. Now, the government recognizes that reparations, that this settlement that was given, that the Native Americans won, because it wasn't given to them, they won this settlement in court, was less than what they were actually owed. but it was significant because it was justice
It was
that they thought.
right? It was acknowledged.
Okay.
And you know how long? See, and y'all, this country been shitting on us for so long. You know, now they talking about acknowledgement, and we had to fight and pull teeth to get the government to even apologize for it.
And then when they actually
go ahead, tell me.
when they actually published the apology, when was this? During the
Clinton year.
It was during the Clinton administration.
No, this was under the first black president.
Oh, right. When the official apology for slavery was published by the Clinton administration, what did they do? What did they add at the end of the apology? People never read it, so people don't know what they did. They put at the end of the official policy, the official apology for slavery, that this apology shall not be used as evidence for any legal claims against the United States government.
And that's what happens when you have a government full of fucking lawyers. Because you know that's what they did. They sat around and they knew they would be liable if they let that fly like that.
Exactly. So that's okay. That's why we have the rest of this history and the rest of this precedent that we had better understand, so we don't have to rely on that little trickeration that Slick Willie.
Yeah. And what do they expect us to do with that? Read that and be like, oh, well, the gig's up.
That's exactly what they expected us to do. Because then what did George Bush say after, I think there was a reparations settlement? Dang, we got so much stuff for like 2 more shows that I think an African nation received. And George Bush made some kind of announcement where it's like, okay, well, now the issue of reparations is solved. But that happened, yes, he did. But that happened the day before 9/11. So that completely missed any kind of news coverage. Yeah. We're going to look that up. We're going to talk about that too. Yep. Anyway, so this was the other thing. Let me see. I'm trying to see where... Because there is something in this document that says that the money for the settlement was awarded to these native tribes, and there were no constraints on how the tribes would spend the money. Well, now the money, let's be clear, right. The money didn't go to individual Native American people. The money went to their tribal governments. Right? But there was no constraint by any agreement,
any authority outside of them,
where nobody told the native governments how they could spend this money. So we're going to give you the links to all these things, folks. I know,
but I told you a story when I used to drive over the road trucks.
Yes, you did. That was a great story.
When I used to drive over the road trucks, and this is for all you people who say that Native Americans should get reparations too. They've gotten reparations. And like we just read it, not as much as they wanted, but they got something. And look, if they want more, they'll fight for more. But my fight is for African descendants of slaves, no relation. So this is the thing, is the fact that they got something. When I was a long distance truck driver in the 90s, and I traveled the country, Canada, Mexico, and stuff, in my tractor trailer, I went through some Native American territories, or reservations they like to call them. I don't like reservations, but through a lot of their sovereign states, I call them. And some of them are doing quite well. I mean, out in Arizona, I think it's Arizona, I mean, the Navajos got the best truck stop in the world. I loved it. But my point being is, I used to go through some of these, and a lot of these communities have issues that oppressed people have. Alcohol use, drugs, but one of the things I saw, and I'm not trying to, and I know that different nations, like you just said, Native Americans aren't a homogenous group,
right,
homogeneous group. So you have different, but the areas I did go through, some of the tribal areas I did go through, I just saw, I just saw abandoned cars everywhere. Pardon me. And I asked one of the Native Americans from that community, who was at the truck stop, we was talking, and he said, the government gives us money. So some of them go get cars, and when they get bored with it, they know they get a check next month, and they'll buy another one. You know what I mean? So, and that's not saying that all Native American people get that, but then look at the casinos. Look at the fact that there's no taxation. Sovereign Indian territory don't have to pay the federal government no taxes. Right. You know what I mean? They the best place to go get your cigarettes. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, it's not perfect.
but we have gotten nothing. And the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was put in the Constitution for us.
Right.
And see, and that was the other injustice. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was all put, I hope I got it right, were all put into place so that black people could be treated on the same level as white people and everybody else.
Well, would be recognized as citizens,
right. So, but what happened was through slickery and the unwillingness to honor us in that way. After we built the damn country, our ancestors built the country, they said, "Well, corporations could be that. What is so? Right. You know, so y'all still playing that game with us, man. It's like back then. Oh well, what about corporations could do that? Or this and that, the other. Yeah, even though it was intended for black people.
Right.
So now we come back in 2019 in reparations, which we're talking for us, Elizabeth Warren. But everybody should get them. You know, y'all still play that game.
Even AOC, even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that.
Right. So the thing, and these are people, as the great James Baldwin said when he talked about Robert Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy said to James Baldwin or someone that in 40 years there'll be a black president. And what did James Baldwin say? He said to the black man in the Harlem barbershop, he said Robert Kennedy just got here yesterday, and here he is telling us, who's been here for centuries, that if you're good and and respectable, maybe one day you'll be president. We'll let you be president. Y'all still playing that game. So now it's like Kellyanne Conway said, and I know I'm wrapped up, but Kellyanne Conway said on one of these talk shows, well, reparations, that's not going to improve. She said that's going to just cause racial tensions. Let me tell you something. When I walk out my door, when we walk out our door, we're not surrounded by white people. Why do I say that? When these black kids in the 7th, 8th Ward go to school, they ain't walking to school with white kids. The thing of it is that we are segregated. What racial there's already there.
How much more racial tension can be created by cutting a check for the restitution that's owed us? That's not. We cannot create more racial tension than white people have already created in this country.
I mean, we live in a country where you have to have a movement because cops are shooting us down like dogs.
And people still don't want to actually pass legislation. People, by people, I mean politicians, even the first actual black president, didn't actually want to pass real legislation that would require police departments to be accountable.
Thanks, Obama.
For the, I mean, come on now. It's so much.
Right,
it's
look,
just.
All right, I'm looking at the amount of people that's still online. We're talking too much. They're going down to 5 and 4. Oh, we got it. We got it. All right.
Leave us alone.
All right. I'm going to run my bathwater. Oh, what was the guy that got? I'm going to run my bathwater, and I'm just going to slit my wrist because I feel so freaking guilty. You know what I mean?
No, nobody wants you to feel guilty. What we want you to feel is educated. We want you to feel empowered, that you understand why reparations is necessary. And next week, we're going to talk about why reparations is not a cure or a fix for racial justice. It is not the same thing as legislation to address racial justice. We're going to talk about H.R. 40. We're going to talk about A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin and the freedom budget for all Americans, and how black people have always been looking out for white people all the time. Even when we were doing real bad, we were like, we can't forget about the white people. and look how far that got us. We're going to talk about Henry Wallace, who a lot of people who were progressive.
He was actually supposed to be president. I mean, well, he was actually supposed to be Roosevelt's vice president.
Yep, but what did Henry Wallace want to do? He wanted to help the black people, so and the white people didn't want that. We're going to talk about what did you bring up? Well, I forgot the thing, but anyway, we got a lot to talk about next week.
Thinking of The Godfather, and just to let y'all know, this is the 50th anniversary of The Godfather book. This is the 50th anniversary. The Godfather, the book The Godfather by Mario Puzo was published 50 years ago today. Now let's look at this. Remember that scene where what's his name, Tom Hagen, went to go see Chi-Chi? I think his name was Chi-Chi, the one that was going to testify against Michael. Right? One of these days, those two, it's going to be white supremacy, right? And it's going to be those who supported white supremacy. Those who supported white supremacy is going to be Tom Hagen. And white supremacy is going to be Chi-Chi, right? And they're going to be talking one day, and they're going to be like, boy, there was some great times, wasn't it? He said, and we were powerful like that once, wasn't we? Yeah, we was once. So black folks done got them reparations.
That's what they're afraid of. Oh, poor.
All right, so
snowflakey people.
We didn't talk so much. We got some more coming up.
So hey, if you like what you see and hear in Luqman Nation, consider supporting us through Patreon every month, or one-time donation through PayPal or GoFundMe. You can find us on all three platforms on looking under Luqman Nation, LuqManNation.
But there's better ways to support your show.
There are no better ways to support Luqman Nation than to send us some money. You can always share and like and subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. But there is no better way to support the Luqmans than to send us some money. So we appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. Share this video. We're going to bed because it's been a heck of a week and we got a lot of work to do. Stay tuned for some really, really cool announcements for some protest actions we are working on with several different groups. Do sign the petition that we have up on our page for Black Alliance for Peace for getting AFRICOM out of Africa. See, we do the work. We don't just sit here and talk about this stuff. We actually get out and do the work. We hope you are too. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, be really good to each other. Everybody, peace.
Black Bernie Sanders supporters, speak with your black voice. Stop being afraid.